at you immediately. It doesn't come at you immediately, so you do have some time to spin this up. But at some point, we certainly hope that you get to into the situation where you're faced with having to figure out, okay, how am I going to scale this business? How am I going to get packages out the door quicker? How am I going to get my inventory in, manage that inventory properly so I can handle this volume? So just be prepared for some of those things. We'll talk a little bit more about those as we go. You do have the potential for new and increased sales, as you would expect to come with increased volume, increased exposure. Can you support that increase, much like I was just saying, through scalability of your business? And now you have the opportunity to maybe to show a different set of products and services, of more of a full offering, um, because real estate's cheap online, right? You can put a catalog of 100 items out there online and just build from there and just go on and on and on. As there's really the price for additional space in a shopping cart um, is fractional. If you tried to do that with brick and mortar, if you tried to do that inventorying all of this stuff in a warehouse, that can be expensive. So depending upon the model, we'll talk about the different types of models that you can employ with e-commerce here in a moment. You might be able to scale a business much faster and show more of your products and services, and possibly even add additional products and services by doing e-commerce. But with that comes with the management of the data, the content itself. A lot of folks struggle with taking a good picture or writing a good product description. So if that's you, that can be a difficult or a challenge to take on with that added um, exposure of your product and services. A couple other things here. There are lots of different platforms to choose from. So you get a wide variety of tools that you can use, which is a good thing. But now you have to ask yourself, well, how am I going to go to market and what tools am I going to use? Because with every channel that you pick, whether, and when I say channel, I'm saying brick and mortar, online, uh, maybe an outside salesperson, whatever that may be. And then you add on top of that the different channels within those, meaning just taking online, for example, I'm going to have a shopping cart, I'm going to have social media, I'm going to have email campaigns, and so on. You have all these different channels you're going to the market with, each with a marketing message. Can you manage that? So while this gives you a very broad exposure, the potential for a very broad exposure, and opens this up for a fairly easy way of doing business, it also can get very complex when you look at it from a much wider, more of a global viewpoint, as opposed to just the singular channels. So that can get a little bit challenging. We'll talk about how to break that down here in just a few minutes. Um, Possible additional revenue streams. I mean, obviously, if your business has not been online to this point, e-commerce can add additional revenue streams to the mix. So, by all means, take advantage of that. But you also have to ask yourself, yeah, just because I can add an additional revenue stream through e-commerce, is it actually financially viable? Your model may need to change. Your inventory management may need to change. Where you get your products, how you ship those products, all of those things come into play. So just because you can go e-commerce does not necessarily mean it's financially viable to do so. So you have to ask that question as well. So some of the basic considerations that we typically will take a client through who's considering e-commerce or improving e-commerce if they already have it is, how affordable is this? Can you afford to do this? You may have been delivering your products and services face to face, locally, but now that you have e-commerce in place and you're going to go much cast that net much wider, so to speak, you're going to have some fees involved, maybe some changes in the way that you ship or deliver the products and services, and how you manage the distribution and inventory, the customer service aspect, those types of things. That's all going to change now, and things you move a lot faster online than they typically do face to face. Shipping has, you know, I remember back in the day when I was doing e-commerce early on, shipping was pretty simple. You weighed the box, you got the calculation, you stuck on the label, and away you went. But now with the multitude of different shippers available, the manner with which they calculate shipping, um, the, the competitive nature of shipping, all of these things play into your ability to be able to afford to do this. If you're in a highly competitive market space and shipping is quote unquote free, can you do that? Can you maintain a competitive position and offer shipping as being free for your product or your service without breaking the bank? So those are things that we typically will work with the client on to make sure that, again, just because you can sell it online, can you afford to do it? Are you prepared for the logistics? As I just said, things move a lot faster online. Uh, you know, Amazon's got same day delivery on certain things, and that doesn't certainly mean that all of our small businesses have to compete directly with Amazon. But the trend is if I'm going to order it online, I'm probably going to get it faster. At least that's what your clients will think. So you have to be prepared to stand up to and deliver those expectations. Um, your inventory, if you're online today with us and you're selling products, do you have part numbers for your products? Do you have descriptions written for your products? Do you have professional pictures from multiple angles of those products? If you don't have those things in place, it's going to make this more challenging to do. It's not going to make it impossible, but if you want to do it right and be competitive in the market space, you're going to have an inventory system that incorporates those things. And things like pictures, you're going to have something probably a little bit better than just snapping them with your phone and dropping them in a cart. There's some work that needs to be done there to make those appealing and get people to push the buy button. Do you know your audience? Your audience that walks through the door, the audience that you speak to on the phone, may not be the same audience that's visiting your website and going to the shopping cart and buying things. So you have to identify them and approach that as its own market. Now, you may find out that the same marketing message that works within 50 miles of your door here in Greenville works just fine with somebody who's sitting in California or Kansas or wherever. Great. That makes things simple for you. But you may also find out that the message that works here doesn't work abroad, and you'll have to tweak that. For those of you who may be exporting your products or services, that holds true, especially for you, because it's probably a pretty safe bet that your marketing message that works here in the United States is probably not going to work in those far-flung markets. So we do have to consider how do we get the message across in a way that's both appealing and, in some cases, not insulting for some of the countries that we may want to go into. So that's something we look at as well. And then how are you going to get paid? You may accept credit cards and cash and so on through the door, but how are you going to do that online? Do you accept POs? Do you take a deposit up front and deliver the product and get paid on the back end of at completion? If you're going overseas, how are you going to handle the monetary exchange and so on? So how you're getting paid is also something you need to consider. It may not be exactly like you're used to doing business. So make sure that you are taking a pause, maybe talking with some of your payment processors, your bank, looking at the platform that you're going to select to build your website on, making sure that it can accommodate the various ways that you need your clients to pay you. So, scenario being, if you've got a product that I can easily just pull out a credit card and pay for, then that's pretty much a slam dunk these days. Just about all platforms will allow you to do that with great ease. But if I have a service that I'm selling and folks typically maybe break that up into 3 equal payments over time. Well, we have online ways to accommodate that as well, but it's maybe a little bit more complex of a process to install. Or go a little bit further, maybe I sell a custom product or I sell a service that's paid for by the project or by the hour that has to have a specific um, quotation done for it. Well, that's a different matter altogether. So all of those can be done through e-commerce. It's just you have to make sure that the platform that you choose, when I say platform, I'm talking like Spotify or some of the shopping cart programs that are out there we'll talk about here in just a moment. You have to make sure that those can accommodate that. So some of the things that I want to talk about with regards to uh, choosing the model, you have to ask yourself, how do I want to go about this e-commerce thing? What is it I'm actually going to put out there um, as far as content and intent? Anytime someone comes to me and asks about a website, putting together a website for a business, one of the things I ask them first and foremost is, what do you want this website to do for you and for your customer? Because none of the rest of it matters if you're not actually engaging a client in a manner in which their expectations can be met and or giving you the information and result that you need, then what's the point? So you have to ask yourself, what's the format that's going to work best to give me what I need as a business and fulfill the expectations of the client as they come to me? So that typically, when we talk e-commerce anyway, that typically takes a few different forms. The first one there, online information to support offline sales. So usually this involves a business, say, that has to quote each client individually because every client that walks through the door is unique. Every delivery of that product or service for that client typically is different. So it's those kinds of things that we would say, okay, let's put the information out there that a client needs to in order to formulate their questions, maybe come up with what they think their solution should be, and then reach out to us to close the deal. That's a form of e-commerce that may not necessarily take a credit card right there online, but it certainly sets up the sale. So that's one way to go about e-commerce. Second way there, a hybrid of supportive online sales and offline primary sales. Typically, that's a situation where maybe I'm selling them something complex, or maybe I'm selling something that's been custom made. But after that primary sale, that initial sale, there may be consumable goods or add-on features that the customer can come back to the website and buy, and don't necessarily need any kind of one-on-one interaction. So, yeah, one time in my history of selling online, I sold welding equipment, and I could sell welding machines and plasma cutters. Those were pretty complex pieces of equipment. People wanted to talk to you about those. They were putting several $100s, sometimes thousands of dollars down on those devices. So they wanted to talk to somebody, and we would talk with them and figure out what the right configuration of that machine and everything was. And that would be our initial sale. But after that sale, they would come back to us to buy the consumables, the wire that might go into the welder, the tips that might go onto the welding gun, and so on. And those were things that they could come right to the website, look up the part number, swipe a credit card, and be done. So our website had more of that hybrid approach that we're talking about there. Full service online sales. Okay, that's you being Amazon. You're putting all your products, all your services out there. Somebody can come to the site, swipe a credit card, done. They're out. So that's great for maybe a retail pure play, something like that. Um, uh, those uh, those are fairly easy to set up these days as compared to the first two platforms. And then the third one is kind of uh, storefront without necessarily having the back end. So you're not inventorying all the product. You're not actually doing the picking, the packing, and the shipping. You're simply putting a catalog of stuff out there online. And when the order comes in, you're turning that paper around and sending it out to the fulfillment center that is doing the picking, the packing, and the shipping of the product. That's a big model these days. But what I will say is probably of all of the ones that are on here, that's probably the least profitable model that there is for certain on a per sale um, comparison. Maybe in volume, if you struck it rich on a hot product or something, maybe you can make a decent return on it. But for the most part, that model is very convenient. But because there's so many entities involved, you don't make a whole lot on each sale. So, um, but those would be kind of the four primary uh, product, or I'm sorry, the models that we would typically see for e-commerce for small business. Next thing you have to ask yourself, am I going to do this myself or am I going to hire somebody to do this? Because the platforms have gotten a whole lot easier today than they used to be. When I used to run a business setting up e-commerce carts for clients, that was before we had Shopify and before we had Amazon as a potential outlet for our sales. That we actually had to code the carts and cobble together different tools to make e-commerce work. And in situations like that, DIY was few and far between. Most people didn't do it themselves. That's the reason I had a business doing it. But um, hiring a pro these days is not necessarily a have to. With the advent of Shopify and Wix Cart and WooCommerce on WordPress sites, these are pretty much you can get in there and do it yourself. So we can certainly help coach you through some of those things through my office if you've got one that maybe you've started and not quite sure how to actually make it start working for you, and we can help you with that. But just understand that there are limitations. You know what your limitations are. Uh, the cost, obviously, is one of the first things you have to consider. You can do it yourself on the cheap, probably, as compared to hiring a pro, but um, don't just assume that because you're hiring a pro, you're getting your money's worth. Frankly, there are a lot of people out there in this industry that hang a shingle saying, "Hey, great, I'm a e-commerce web designer," and they've never sold anything online. All they do is they know the software. So that's a bad combination. You need to, as you would if you were hiring an employee, you need to vet those folks really well. Um, the time involved, again, if you hire a pro, you're probably going to get it done much quicker than if you do it yourself. Um, so you have to ask yourself, how much is the time worth? Maybe it's not just your hour by hour time that you're investing as much as it is how much time am I losing going to market with my product and service? Do I want to wait that long um, to get this done on my own as opposed to actually getting to the market quicker by hiring it done? Uh, and as I said a moment ago, we all have our limitations. Maybe you're not the best writer. Maybe a graphic artist is not your thing. If that's it, know where your weaknesses are. Hire those types of things out. You can still maybe do some of or the bulk of this, but hire out those smaller pieces that maybe you're not so great at and have a good combination. But that said, going back up to hiring a pro, um, if you're saying, look, I'm just not skilled in any of this. I can't put it together. I can't take a good picture. I can't write a good description. So I'm just going to hire it all done. That's wonderful. You get the right pro. But again, someone's never actually sold something online. If somebody doesn't know your product really well, they don't take the time to sit down and learn about your business and how you do business, chances are that that cart's going to miss the mark. So you want to make sure that when you do hire out those skills, you're getting the right match, both in the skill base, the tools, and the the culture, so to speak, that you're bringing into the business. You need to ask yourself what amount of maintenance you want to take on, and this would be with a website that's e-commerce or not. Do you want to maintain this website yourself, or do you want to pay somebody to maintain the site? Um, it can be expensive to have somebody else maintain your site. I've heard nightmare stories of clients that they get nickled and dimed for every time they pick up the phone and say, "Hey, I need this price changed, or I need you to switch out this description for the, or I need you to change this from our Christmas specials to our Valentine's Day specials, or whatever." And they're throwing a lot of money at those kinds of things that if they had take just a little bit of time, they may be able to eliminate a percentage of those changes and save themselves some money. Um, but that said, um, maintenance may not be your thing, and you may just frankly may not have the time. You got a business to run, right? So if that's the case, um, look for somebody to help you maintain it, because the last thing you want to do is to set up a website and just let it sit idle. Websites require maintenance, ongoing, all the time. Don't assume that you can just set this up and let it run. Make sure that if you do hire somebody as a pro, that you have the freedom to move about the website. You can log in, you can check the inventory, you can even move that website to another host if need be. Don't get yourself into a situation where every little move you make, you've got to incorporate the time and effort of that pro, because that's a hostage situation right there. Um, when you get a website done by a pro, at some point they should hand you the keys and say, "Okay, it is yours. Here's how you operate this website. Here's how you get access to this website. Here's all of the information you need to change this website from me to somebody else. If you need me from here on out, just call me, but otherwise, you have the keys." If you don't have that situation, you're probably closer to that hostage side of the scale than you are the freedom side of the scale, and you may want to change that. So, as I've said, do your due diligence, do your homework, make sure that if you do hire a pro, which is fine, I think that many people should um, do it right. If you're going to do it yourself, do your homework on that side too, and make sure that you do have the capability and the dedication to do it on your own.
Hey, Earl, while you're on this page, we have a question from Larisha Grant asking, Earl, I'd like to set up my e-com to sell construction equipment that I import to the government, large water pipes, etc. Is there a special type of e-com that I'd use when dealing with the government, or would I treat them like any other business?
Yeah, that's a great question, and a lot of it depends upon the categorization of your products. If your products can be considered um, items that can be added to the GSA schedule, and the GSA schedule, when I say GSA schedule, just think online mall for government procurement. That's where they can go and do their quote unquote shopping for goods and services. without having to go through this entire bid process that you typically associate with government procurement. If your products or services can fall into those categories, and there's certain criteria and stipulations you have to meet in order for that to happen, and that's a conversation we can have offline after the presentation today. Then I would suggest going completely onto a GSA schedule type of a scenario. If your products and services do not meet that criteria, then you can do a couple of different things. Chances are selling to the government is probably not going to be under the same terms, pricing, and so on that it would be, say, to the general public. So you may have to set aside a portion of your website that's set up specifically for government procurement officers that they can log into their area and get the pricing, get the configuration they need, while the other part of the cart is public facing and sells under those terms. So, yeah, I think maybe a phone call or two would probably be a better way to help you solve that question. But you can do it. It's just a matter of how do we categorize that product or service. So that's a good question. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the technology. Obviously, we're talking e-commerce, we're talking online. There's a lot of things, a lot of moving parts there. So, technology involved. So, just to understand that technology is just a tool. It's not the answer. You're going to use technology to accomplish different aspects of e-commerce, whether that's a payment gateway or the website that hosts the e-commerce cart or the cart itself. There is technology involved, and for the most part, it should be very complex but very easy for the user to use. Um, so just understand this should be helpful to you, but it's not something that you want to put out there and then hide behind the curtain and let the technology speak for you to do everything for you. People still buy from people. They still want to interact with your company. They're still going to talk about your company out there. So you have to be somewhat personable out there as well. Don't just hide behind your technology, I guess is all I'm saying there. So the first part of that equation, when we talk technology and being personable, is deciding on what cart you need. So you have to ask yourself, what do I need out of my shopping cart? Do I need to sell a product, therefore keep track of inventory, maybe calculate shipping costs, collect sales tax, those kinds of things? Or is this going to be maybe a service where people are going to kind of look at a catalog of things that I do for them, select the pieces, parts that they want me to do, build a package, pay for it, or are they going to, as I said earlier in one of the models, simply learn about it, formulate their own questions, and pick up the phone and call me? And then maybe I build them through a cart, um, not necessarily client facing, so to speak. They log in and pay under their own account. Is it going to be a full service cart? Are they going to be able to handle um, all aspects of running the business through the cart? So can I design my not only my website and my interface with my customers, but can it handle the logistics? How many of that part do I actually have? Can I now reorder that part when it gets to a reorder point? Do I can I select what shipping is going to be used inbound and outbound? Will I be able to link this cart to my bank? Can I download this information straight to my bookkeeping system? All of those kinds of things can make your life a lot easier if it's streamlined. I'll be the first one to tell you, I've been in this business for a very long time. I've seen a lot of these different tools that help clients put things together. It's a patchwork quilt at best, still, unfortunately. There is not one all encompassing platform that's reasonably priced for small business that will do everything from A to Z. But some of them do a lot more than others. Some of them speak well with other programs. So, for instance, you know, Shopify might download all of the information and dump it into your QuickBooks more efficiently, say, than WooCommerce will. But the fact is, you have to find out what pieces of the puzzle you have. And when we add e-commerce to it, we want to make sure that those interconnect as seamlessly as possible. Um, Most of the carts these days, you don't have to worry about any kind of coding or customization. They're all pretty much out of the box solutions. So checking check boxes and selecting radio buttons and filling in the forms is the bulk of all you have to know how to do. You don't have to be technically savvy and know how to code or anything to operate any of these carts. But if you're someone like myself that could um, get in there and tweak some of the code if you wanted to, that can limit some of the choices that you may have available to you should you want to do something like that. Very few of the cart platforms out there allow you to tinker around behind the curtain and turn things the way you want it. Most of them have keep you in a controlled atmosphere so you don't hurt yourself, so to speak. So DIY is limited to what the platform itself will allow. As far as that interactivity bullet, that's what I was saying earlier. How well does it play with others in the sandbox? Does your cart play well with, say, Google Analytics? Does it have a feature that allows you to do in-depth search engine optimization or SEO, as you see there? Will it dump numbers into my financial, into my bookkeeping system, so I can get financials, those types of things? They're all very, very important. Some platforms do things better than others. So just make sure you do your due diligence there and pick the right one. These are the primary cart platforms that we see at the SBDC. Shopify is the number one right now if you're in retail sales of any kind, and even services work fairly well on Shopify. Those of you that do a subscription model. Shopify has a subscription model that works well. Squarespace tends to be more expensive than some of the other platforms, but we see it not as much as the others, but it is kind of safe space for you to operate in. It produces a very good looking cart, but it's not portable. You have to play inside their box, and that is it. You don't get to bring in anything from the outside. I could say the same with Shopify, but Shopify tends to work well with other platforms. Squarespace, not so much. Some of your social platforms will also incorporate e-commerce, so like you can sell directly off of Etsy and Instagram and so on. These days, you can find social platforms that will allow you to sell directly. Not a big fan of that. I mean, it's certainly great to supplement your e-commerce, but I would not qualify that as your primary e-commerce. So, if you're thinking of going that route, you might want to give me a call and we'll talk strategy on that. And then all those ones that fall into that DIY category. Wix, they have a great e-commerce cart. WordPress owns probably 75% of the web right now, and most all websites are made in WordPress. And the shopping cart that's associated with WordPress is WooCommerce. And WooCommerce is easy to work with, probably not as easy as Shopify, but that one allows you to tweak things behind the scenes. It's also very, very portable. So that's one of the reasons why WordPress gets the lion's share of design these days. Then you've got GoDaddy, HostGator, Bluehost. All of those hosting companies out there tend to have a e-commerce um, cart solution. They're okay. They're not going to be as powerful as some of the Wix and the WooCommerce and Shopify. Certainly, they're not going to do that good of a job. But for an inexpensive solution, sometimes they can work. Um, so the things that tend to trip people up when they're selecting e-commerce is the shipping. As I said earlier, I sold welding equipment. I sold everything from gloves to welders that weighed hundreds of pounds. Imagine trying to calculate shipping on that wide of a range. So make sure you can accommodate your shipping, flat rate shipping, shipping by the pound. You have items that are extra long or extra or kind of a weird shape. Those are things that you need to think about. Can you collect sales tax? If so, how many different tax areas do you have to collect? Those are all things you have to consider as well. How will you interact with these platforms? Do you have good customer service? Some of them, in fact, a lot of them are not based here in the United States, so you have to think about communications. You have to think about timing and so on. Will that work for you? And then, what kind of policies are you going to offer? You're now online. People are going to be ordering, and how do you process returns? What kind of fees are involved with said returns? How are you going to keep the data that you're collecting safe and private? All of those types of things have to be accommodated now, maybe more so than what you had when you were doing things just face to face. Getting paid, um, you know, every cart tends to have its own solution. So Shopify, for instance, you can use Shopify's pay gateway and process payments right there through Shopify. Or you can use something like the payment services listed there, like PayPal or Square. You can incorporate those. You may have a bank that offers merchant services, which basically is just them allowing you to accept credit cards, much like Square. So those tend to be a little bit more expensive, a little more complex. But yeah, the probably the most popular way I see it done is just straight through the cart, or linking it up with Square or PayPal, something like that. That's usually the way I see it being done right now with small businesses. Purchase orders aren't that popular out there. Most people want to be paid before they start moving inventory around for a client. So just make sure that if that's a deal breaker for you, make sure your cart will allow for that. And wires, COD, certified checks, that normally doesn't come into play unless you're doing overseas transactions. If you're doing overseas transactions, then those come into play, and you need to figure out how to accommodate that, because frankly, you want to make sure you've got money in hand in such a way that it cannot be reversed the second the ship leaves the port. It happens, unfortunately. So you want to make sure that you're not just taking credit cards willy-nilly over on e-commerce transactions that go overseas, because um, fraud happens, and it happens a lot in that instance. Um, Dean, we're at time. I know we got started late. Do you want me to continue, or do you want me to just kind of wrap it up at this point?
Well, we have a couple people that, one person that had to drop off to move on to their next activity.
I know you're recording it, so I can finish out. That's up to you. Everybody can hang on if they can.
I would say go ahead and finish, and just if folks do have to drop off, you will receive a copy of the presentation with Earl's contact information. Number of people have asked some questions about that.
Okay.
And
All right.
those who stay on will run through some final details on score as well.
Okay. No, just wrap. I'm just have a few slides left on the website side of things, and then we'll try to move to questions. But search engine optimization, you want to make sure that your cart has the ability for you to control the content, the narrative, basically, that you're putting out there on the website. It's not good enough to just simply describe the product or the service that you offer anymore. You've got to use the phrases that people search for in the Google search box. You've got to make sure that the titles incorporate some of those keyword phrases that people are typically using to talk about your products and services. If you're not doing little things like that, and there's a whole host of things that you can do behind the scenes to also improve SEO. If you are not doing that, or your shopping cart does not allow you to do that, then you're going to lose out to your competition. You're never going to have the opportunity to move up the ranks and ultimately find yourself on that first page of Google, that coveted spot. So knowing that your cart can do these things, or at least allow you to do these things, is paramount in playing that game of search engine optimization and winning that spot on Google. Um, Which then leads us to analytics. That's the backside of it. You know, you're pushing hard to get that traffic in. You're pulling all this information together. You're hoping that you're bringing in the right crowd, and your efforts result in sales. But for all the traffic that ends up in sales, there's a ton of traffic that ends up in nothing. So we like to see, how did that happen? Why did that happen? So that's where analytics come into play. Um, you have various choices there. You can use Google, and I highly recommend, if you're going to have any kind of website, e-commerce or not, connect Google Analytics to it. This is how you can tell if what you're doing is actually effective. And we're going to talk about just a few of the things you'll want to look for here in just a moment. Social media also offers you some insights. So if you're advertising on Facebook, for instance, or Etsy or whatever, they all tend to have some form of an analytics tool that allows you to see who's coming, who's going, who's clicking, who's not. So just make sure that you're incorporating some form of analytics in any of the platforms that you use. Some of your e-commerce platforms will have their own analytics. I'm not uh, a fan of just using that alone. I don't think it gives you the depth that you need. That's why I recommend that you use a Google Analytics to back that up. And then jump outside of your website. Check your trends in your market space. We have tools here at the SBDC that we can run industry reports on various industries and give you some insights on some of the trends within the industries. But you need to monitor your market as well. Who's buying what? Who's the big player? What's the next big thing? What's dying off? Those types of things. So you can adjust your selections accordingly. As far as what matters in analytics, you can get a ton of data on what the comings and goings on the website um, um,
Hmm.
have, but usually, people want to know how many people are actually coming to the site. That's great, but if you got 100,000 people coming to the site in a week, but you only had 3 people buy, that's not so great. I'd rather have 1,000 people come to the site and 900 of them buy. So make sure that you're focusing on quality traffic, not quantity of traffic. That's a big thing. Bounce rate, what that means, somebody comes to your website and immediately turns around and leaves. They don't go to any other page. Whatever page they landed on, they turn right around and they go back out to Google and continue their search, whatever. So if you have a high bounce rate, that means their initial view of your website was not successful. They didn't like what they saw, or it wasn't a good match or something. And obviously, you want that bounce rate to be low. How much time did somebody spend on the page or the site in general? Obviously, the longer the time spent, the more you're engaging that client, the more likely you've given them what they are looking for. If you see short time on page or time on site times, um, your content's not very intriguing. So you may need to work on that a little bit. Cart abandonment, we've all heard that if we've been in or around e-commerce for any period of time. People come in, they fill their cart up with things, but they don't click the checkout button. There's a number of things that can cause that. The number one thing that will cause that is if shipping is not being shown on the screen as they add items to the cart. That will hurt you. People want to know if shipping is involved anyway. How much is this costing me to get these products to my front door? Um, what page did they enter the site and what page did they exit the site? We want to know where they hit the site and where they left it. If people assume that the traffic comes in at the homepage, it doesn't. Probably, a fair percentage of the time, the traffic coming from Google to your website is going to some page other than the homepage. We need to know what page those are because those are the pages that are the most relevant in Google's eyes, and those are the pages that we want to maintain that success, and that we want to bring the others up to speed with similar content and work on that. So knowing where they come in and where they leave can help with that. As far as the traffic that come at you, what was the source? Did it come from Google? Did it come from Yahoo? Did it come from a mobile device, a desktop? What country did it come from? If it came from the United States, what state did it come from? And what search phrase did they use to get here? All of that's available using a tool like Google Analytics. And then make sure you're comparing these analytics across the platforms. If Google says, using my prior example, if Google says that you're getting a high number of hits and traffic coming into your website for hypertherm plasma cutters, well, does Instagram say the same thing? Does Facebook say the same thing? Or am I getting different answers from those platforms? And if so, why? You can track those types of things down. But when you have multiple platforms and you can do that comparison, it will make you much, much more effective with the content that you put on your website. Um, you don't want to just put stuff out there to put stuff out there. You want to put stuff out there that's going to get not only the search engine's attention, which gets you that quantity, but also the user's attention, which gets you the quality and ultimately the sale. In the interest of time, I'm just going to breeze over the last two items, which is email and social media. Just understand that you want to incorporate email and social media into your e-commerce endeavor. They should all work together. They should all have the same marketing message. They should all have the same look and feel. They should work seamlessly with regards to promotions. If I click on the promotion on social media, it should take me to a page on the website that is, first and foremost, showing me that promotion. Um, don't make me search for it. Don't make the user look around to find something. If somebody lands on your cart or on your web page and they're thinking to themselves, well, what do I do next? You lost. They're leaving. So you want to make sure that you are leading people through this process, and email certainly is a great tool to do that. If you're not using Constant Contact, MailChimp, Emma, something like that, you should incorporate that. Get some of those tools together working for you so you can start pushing some traffic to your website through the use of promotions, newsletters, whatever it may be. Video, people out on the web are in a hurry and lazy. They don't want to read. They want this to be fast. So video is a really good way to handle that, and how to use your product. These are things you can use your phone for and record some how-tos or behind the scenes. This is our factory. This is how we produce this widget that we're selling you. These are the people behind, the scenes that are making sure that you get your shipment on time. People like that stuff. They want to engage with your company, and that's a great way for you to um, keep people engaged. Even have them become your advocate. They'll share that with friends and family because if it's done right. So use video where you can. Same way social media. If you're out there on social media and you got a good following, use that, leverage that, get that traffic from there to your website. Um, Highly recommend tools like Buffer and Hootsuite, where you can schedule ahead of time campaigns that will push seasonal or holiday related promotions to your e-commerce website. If you're not familiar with how that works, that's a really good phone call to make to us. I can give you a crash course on how to do that. And if your site or the platform you choose is set up to do blogging, we highly suggest that you incorporate blogging as well. That does a few things. It's primarily valuable for the SEO, search engine optimization. It keeps Google in the forefront because you are adding content in a timely manner. You're typically adding volume of content in text, which Google can read and give you a relevancy score much easier on text than it can, say, pictures, even videos. Blogging can boost your SEO rankings, and WordPress does that really well. Shopify has a blog that you can incorporate with it. So any of those platforms that allow you to add blogging, that's a plus. And then a moment for cybersecurity. For those of you who are doing e-commerce, you understand you're responsible for data here. Not only credit cards, but name, address, phone number, all of that's protected information. Should you get hacked and you have a breach, you are liable for the protection of that data. So, if you're going to enter into e-commerce, you must also consider how you're going to protect the data that you are selecting. So make sure that you've shored that up. We have an assessment that we can offer through the SBDC. You can come to us. We can talk to you on the phone, do some high level assessments, and if need be, we can even do a site visit and talk you through some of the things you may need to change there at your business. Most all of this is process oriented. People think cybersecurity is really technical and costs a lot of money. No, it for the basic stuff, it's just you being aware and maybe changing the way you do business a little bit, and you're good to go. If you are in a position where you're not quite sure how well you're set up with cybersecurity, you might want to give us a call and have us do at least a high level review for you. All right, so we're towards the end here. What are your next steps? There are other classes that we offer from time to time. You see them listed there. We have SEO specific classes. We have online marketing classes. We have a lot of things that are associated directly with e-commerce, as well as things that are not, like financial management and cash flow management and those types of things, pricing that have a impact on this, but may not be directly associated with it. But all of those things exist. Look us up, scsbdc.com, and check out the training tab there. You'll see a lot of things that we do. We're also always scheduling classes here with SCORE. So check out those on their website as well, and get yourself into some of those classes. So the resources I've mentioned today listed here, you can check those out online, and as was said, you'll get these slides after the fact, so you can Google each one of those. And certainly, if you have questions with any of those, you can reach out to me directly. You see my phone number, my email there. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. Appreciate you guys hanging on with for an additional 15 minutes. Got the 15 minutes back that we lost there at the beginning. So appreciate that. I'll take questions at this point, and let Dean close out for SCORE at this point.
Thank you very much, Earl. One question that comes to my mind, and maybe it's really into the front end of this thing. Do most people who evolve their business into e-commerce, is it an evolution, or is it typically someone has a vision and says, I don't want bricks and mortar, I just want to sell this online and immediately go into an e-commerce type of situation?
Well, there was a period of time where it would have been at least uh, evenly divided between those who migrate into it and those who start in it. But I think these days, most small businesses, when they walk through the door and they're in that business planning stage and trying to figure out what this business is going to look like, most all of them have some form of an online strategy. And if they're selling something face to face, then they're probably selling it online as well. The only ones that really would probably migrate into it over time would be those that have the more complex model. So those that have maybe a custom product or a service, sometimes they'll go with a complete informational website, or what I call a business card website. Who am I? Where do you find me? What do I do? They'll start with that and then go to e-commerce at some
Uh,
future point. But I'd say 90% of the people that walk through my door, they've already got an e-commerce idea in mind when they start these days.
okay. Um, are there any other questions from? I see one person says that the chat is disabled. I don't know exactly how to solve that one, because everyone that I have is has access.
I think the Q&A was working. I thought I
Yeah,
saw
I
a
see.
Q&A comments early on.
Lakeisha Grant, Marika, was a question that we had earlier. Uh, so,
Yep.
you hit a hot spot for me just a few minutes ago when you talked about the responsibility. I had a note for myself here, risks and insurance. And I often wonder, how do people protect themselves from the kind of, preparations for doing business in e-commerce. If you have a product that's available, and you're building a product, I guess you can build into the lead time whatever it is you're selling, as opposed to trying to sell it off the shelf. Does that does that make sense?
Yeah, your preparation, your logistics, those will need to have a good assessment done for sure. You don't know, a lot of times you don't know what you don't know, because you go online and like I said, customers' expectations change typically when you go online. So you may have to reassess some of the processes you have in place. I know we had to revamp our shipping somewhat when I did balloons and party goods online as well, and we had to change around some of the logistics part of that equation for our business when we did that. But as far as any kind of risk and liability, most of the time, if you're running a business and you've got that general liability coverage and you've thought through the risks involved with selling face to face, you probably set yourself up pretty good to face the risks of selling online. The only difference is the enforcement of of the law. You were probably set up to protect yourself against people walking through the door here in South Carolina. You know the laws, rules, and regulations here. But if you sell something into California, which they have a completely different set of laws, rules, and regulations of what can be sold and what can't be sold, and what kind of notifications have to be attached, and all that. And same way goes if you go overseas. Well, now you have to reassess all that aspect of the business as well. So,
Yeah.
uh, yeah.
Well, our time has come to a close. I want to thank Earl in particular for joining us today, and we've had a good audience today. As as we share, these workshops are put together by SCORE, And what we very much appreciate you joining us, becoming part of the group that so many small business owners have participated in. And each person who's attending here today will receive a copy of the presentation. And I welcome any feedback and will be available to you as situations come up in your business. SCORE is a national organization. We have over 10,000 volunteers, 270 plus chapters, and it would surprise you the scope of the businesses and evolution of organizations that have been part of the client base for SCORE. You can follow us on Facebook and X, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube. And of course, we are a SBA supported organization, and we welcome all comers. And we very much thank you for joining us today. And with that, I will close our call and look forward to follow up with other workshops in the near future. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.